whatever your situation is, budget it and live within that budget.
And this is a common sense. It's not scripture. I'm not going to be reading scripture, but this is a common sense, fundamental statement that I really believe, and others have. There is a formula for guaranteed financial success if you follow it. If everybody's ready, I'm going to give it to you. A guaranteed formula for financial success. Spend less than you earn and do it for a long time. And you will be financially successful. Let me just say that one more time. Spend less. Make the decision, make the choice. Spend less than you earn and do it for a long time, and you will be financially successful. What indebtedness does is that it encourages us to spend more than we earn, and therefore we continue to go down instead of up. We have nothing that we're able to have as discretionary income because it's already committed. Spend less than you earn, do it for a long time, you'll be financially successful.
Now, let's talk about a couple major items for most people around the world, especially for people who live in the West. The two biggest items that a person's going to have to pay money for is a house and a car. What about those two? Talk to us about those two.
And again, I'm not the financial counselor. Shirley could say the boy needs help himself, and I agree. But just from my own study, and I think from our journey, that there is one way of looking at indebtedness, Sammy. And it is that if what you are going into debt to buy. If an emergency hit and you had to get out of debt, you had to sell that the value of what you're buying would be able to would be able to cover the indebtedness. In other words, you spend $100,000, you go into debt, $100,000 on a mortgage note for a house. If you had to sell that house, and it would recoup that, it would clear that or even more, then I think some of the financial counselors say that you don't need to consider that a dangerous debt.
Okay, let me ask you, what about a car? Because it seems like a car and a house they're both major ticket items, but they're a little bit different in that a house appreciates
and a
car depreciates.
I think consistently, and I'm going to just know there may be some business automobile allowances. This is a work car or something like that. But almost consistently across the board, the counsel is pay cash for a car you can afford, and rather than having to take that $500 a month car payment and send it to a mortgage company, save that. Drive that old car until you have accumulated enough to pay cash for whatever because it so rapidly depreciates. That's just now whether how far-reaching that's going to go with everybody, but that's just the counsel because it so rapidly depreciates.
And probably on the front end, the car depreciates that first year the quickest, and so especially I think for young people, who are young married couples starting off, it's healthy I think to try to find, and we did this early on in our marriage, try to find something that is used but good. And that is trustworthy vehicle that is used. Therefore you've gotten most of your depreciation out of the way, and buy that at a lot less price than you could buy a brand new one.
These counselors will say that the number one addiction that Americans have is with new cars. And it is the most. I mean, you look at how the Ford Motor Company and Toyota coming in and all kinds of that they're just selling millions of cars, new cars every year,
and really expensive. With some that are as expensive as my home, and but and kind of an interesting thing. This kind of funny little deal, and somebody watching might get mad at me for saying this, but I have a little ritual that I go to Starbucks every morning, get my coffee, and then I go have my quiet time, but. It's kind of an interesting deal when I go to Starbucks because you pull up and you see all these really nice cars, very expensive cars, but they're parked way away all by themselves. I get to pull right in there next to Starbucks, go in and get my coffee because I'm not worried about what's going to happen to it.
Yeah.
And that there really is a principle there, I think, is that Jesus said, if you're storing up all of these treasures for yourself, you're going to be worried about them wearing out, or robbers or thieves coming, and
and just from a lesson from church history, one of our favorite characters in church history, George Whitefield, the great revivalist from England and in the colonies, and God used him mightily in the first Great Awakening in our nation. But there, history, his biographers would say that at one point he almost lost his integrity in ministry over indebtedness, and what his heart was to buy ground in Georgia for the purpose of it being a farm that could support an orphanage, but he had to go into debt in order to do something that he was feeling like God wanted him to do, and when the crops didn't come in, or various things didn't happen, and that indebtedness rose up, it just almost, he almost went to prison. If somebody had not come in that day and time in England, you could go to debtor's prison. So here's this famous evangelist, mightily used of God, but it was debt that just almost shut him down and made him a spectacle, had not some wealthy benefactor come in and bailed him out. There might have been another whole section.
I want us to talk in just a minute and try to close this thing out about how do you get out of debt and what do we do. But I do want to go to the issue of the house, because it seems to me like that's, and I don't want people to walk away with a false impression here. I have probably the one investment that I made that I feel just incredibly good about. Some people might look at as debt, and that is buying a house instead of renting a house. Of course, especially here in America, there's a lot of benefits financially to buying a house as opposed to renting, and you actually end up saving money, a good bit of money, if you're buying rather than renting, because for tax purposes and so forth. But also, what I remember my son, in counseling with him, telling him the best investment he'd ever make was a house. They started with this little bitty starter house when he got married, and then, but he got, I think it was a 15-year note instead of a 30-year note.
I wanted to add that because I think, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I feel so strongly about it. A 15-year note usually costs you about $100 to $200 more a month, but you're knocking 15 years off. There's no better savings account.
And then what he did on top of that was to pay $100 a month on the principal. And it just went like this. And as far as his
equity,
equity in the house went, and then at 6 years later down the road, they were able to sell that house and move it whenever they started having kids, and move into something much larger and much more affordable at the same notes. So that seemed to me like just an investment. And so speak to that a little bit. Is house indebtedness an investment, or is indebtedness?
I think